we're bringing you all you need to succeed in the real estate business. It's Spilling the LT, brought to you by Lawyers Title, telling you what it's really like to work in real estate.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Tamera Gaede, and today we're going to talk about how to get real estate deals done through 2022. But first, if you like my content, you're really going to love my escrow team, so I hope you'll give me an opportunity to help you with your title needs. You can reach out to me on any of my social media platforms, and let's get a conversation going. I'd like to welcome my guest. This is Bob Johnson with Bob Mortgage, and he's been my guest on the podcast before, but I am a big fan of Bob's. We partner quite a bit on social media content, video, all things real estate market. So I'm excited to have Bob back today. Thank you, Bob, for joining me on the show again.
Absolutely,
I appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Always good
Tamera.
to see you.
Yep, very happy to be here.
And we do partner quite a bit. And so we had a couple of conversations about what's happening in the market and how realtors can strategically work getting deals done through the rest of the year. But I had an interesting article. I love Inman. I love all things real estate, kind of newspaper type things. I don't know. And they published an article earlier this week called "Nearly a Third of Income Gobbled Up by Monthly Mortgage Payments Now." And I thought that was a really very big statement, especially with all the appreciation that we've had over the last couple of years. You don't really think through what it costs somebody in their monthly income now for their mortgage payment because prices have gone up so much and now money's even more expensive. So that's what we're going to talk about today, along with what we think the Fed's going to do, what we think the market's going to do through the end of the year, and how realtors can use that strategy, use this information as a strategy in their business. So again, thank you, Bob, for joining me today. I want to start with this paragraph. The share of income required to afford a mortgage has risen 30.2%, well above the established norm of 22.8% of a homeowner's income, according to this Inman article. On a national level, home prices are about 25% higher than they would need to be for affordability to return to normal, an extremely unlikely outcome, with Zillow economists forecasting relatively flat home values for the next 12 months. So that's a big deal, right? House prices have gone up. We know, of course, money is more expensive now. I'm hearing eights are coming.
Don't put that out there, Tamera.
We'll talk about that. But, you know, one of the problems that I have said over and over again that is a result of this market is we want Texans to be able to afford houses in Texas, right?
Yep.
And so can Texans afford to buy houses in Texas? And what is that? I mean, our standard of living hasn't gone up to compensate for the rise in appreciation values. And now this article, a third of your income is required for your mortgage payment. So thoughts, Bob? You want to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I do agree that we have a bit of a challenge because we have home prices that we saw go up at the rate that they went up from 2020, right, when we got into the pandemic, and now we've started to see some leveling off. We definitely don't have prices dropping, right, like depreciation out there.
No,
but we have some leveling off, which is basically what we need to have for a more normalized market. Which, when you have that happen, and then you add to the fact that we have rates where they have gone, right? So you have rates that we were seeing in the 2s and 3s now into which we still find rates in the 5s, 6s, and 7s, right? Out there in the marketplace. That just means you are spending more of your money, your take-home money, on payments like a mortgage. But at the same time, you're also spending that same amount on rent. I mean, rents have risen, 13.5%.
Yes, it's incredible.
As well.
Absolutely.
So we're starting to see rents go up as well as your mortgage payments. And we all know that regardless of the rate that the current market's at, if you have rents that are rising, you're still
spending that money.
You're still spending the money, and your rate on that particular investment, which is not an investment, it's a complete debt, is 100%. And so you've really lost anything and everything when you're out there renting. So there's always still that better side of purchasing. But it is taking a lot more of your income to be able to accomplish the payment now.
Yeah, and I'm a big challenge solution kind of girl, you know, so I appreciate the positivity and the outlook. You know, you're right. If you are renting, you're 100% of your money is going away, right? You're not keeping anything. You're not building equity. You're not building, wealth for yourself and for your family. So, but don't tell my tenants. I like them right where they are. So anyway, I do agree rent rates have gone up. And so everything's gone. Everything's gone.
Yeah, everything's more expensive.
Everything's more expensive. So I just get concerned. And I like to talk through these things because, again, I don't think that we're in some dire moment here, right? There's a lot of positivity that's coming out of this market shift that needed to happen, right? The greed, the overinflated prices, all of that kind of thing. But I just what my main concern is with the rise in home prices, the rise in interest rates, how do we make sure Texans get to keep buying homes here?
There's opportunity in both sides of that market. There's opportunity for those that can take advantage of it when the rates are low, and there's opportunities right now that present itself for those that are looking to make a purchase. One, we identify the why. Why do they want to buy, right? So we make sure that we understand their intentions, and then we have to put the right type of strategy together. So when they're buying a home today, they're properly positioned regardless of what interest rates are doing. So they would have had to, if we go back 2 years or a year ago, there was the same amount of concern for those Texas home buyers buying because they didn't have an extra $100,000
that is correct.
To pay
you
above.
You are right about that. Yes,
they didn't
absolutely.
They didn't have the $100,000 to pay above the actual appraised value. The home was only worth $500,
right?
But they were having to come out of pocket with an extra $100 just to get in the game, right? $600,000 they were paying for that, even though the rate was lower. They gave up $100,000 of their money.
True.
Right? So they're going to have to be in that house for a long period of time to be able to make that investment and have some type of return on that investment.
The appreciation has dropped back down to normal. Right. Absolutely.
So those that are buying today, I would argue, could be in a much better position, even though they're paying a higher interest rate than what somebody else paid at 2.5% or 3% or 4%, right? As the market started to kind of change a little bit, because now they're paying $500,000 for the house, not $600,000. They're not having to come out of pocket with that money. Then we're financing it. We don't have to go a 30-year fixed. I mean, we're locking people in the 5s, but they're on adjustable rate mortgages, ARMs. They could be on like a 7-year ARM. Okay, that means it's fixed for 7 years. Let's say you get 5.5 for a 7-year ARM, right? It's fixed for 7 years. Well, our anticipation is the market will change, and it may change in 2024, maybe the end of 2023, and we can talk about that. I know we're going to kind of get into that. But when that market changes, we just move them out of that fixed ARM product for that 7-year period into something that's longer term, if that's what their plan is to keep that home for 30 years or 20 years.
Yeah, and as things change, right, lending products change too. And so, the ARM is back, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody's talking about the ARM again. And, I've kind of thought about that myself for a couple of situations that I've had personally. And I think it is a good option, but we don't have that crystal ball, right? Correct. So we really don't know what it's going to look like between year 1 and year 7. And you really are going to have to refi, right? Because your payment's going to balloon or your interest rate's going to balloon after that.
Well, I mean, it's going to start adjusting based on whatever the margin and index is that we're tying it to. So these would typically be like 1-year adjustments. So it would adjust the first year. So if it's a 2% adjustment the first year, it has the potential to go up 2%, right, that first year. But the reality is it's probably not going to do that large of adjustment at its initial phase, right? So it may start adjusting a little bit upward. But we still have run room, right? We have 7 years to make decisions on what they need to do, and there's a lot that can change in 7 years.
Yeah, and a lot can change.
I mean, you think about the average person staying in the home. What's the average time period?
Actually, well, according to the economic forecast, it's now 7 to 10 years. Is what
7 to 8 years, right?
So they may be
they have long-term intention, but they're out of it.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, we saw so many people buying and selling houses the last 2 years. Maybe, obviously, things are going to stabilize now, but. Yeah. I was like, I don't know that I agreed that the average time in the house was 7 to 10 years 2 years ago.
No. I mean, people that were buying, we're just making sure.
Now people might stay.
Yeah, we're just making sure they stayed in it for 12 months.
If you have a 2.9, okay, you're staying.
Yeah, there's got to be significant why that they're getting out of that house. And typically what we're telling those people, like they're saying, well, if it's not the cash in equity, they're really needing to move, we're like, can you keep that as a rental? Like, is there a way to qualify to keep that as a rental so that a way you can keep that asset right? Because you're turning it into that investment property. Keep it at 2.9 because now you're going to get more money
rent.
coming back to you in rent that you can actually profit from. And then you keep that debt really low.
Now you're thinking like Tamera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm like, yeah, we're going to keep it as a rental.
Heck yeah, man.
But there were some other things. And look, this isn't on my script, and I like to deviate off script all the time.
Yeah.
And I know you're you're capable to go with me down that yellow brick road. But, you know, we saw when the new appraised values came out this year, a lot of people got sticker shock too. And so that will normalize as well.
Yeah.
We are not going to see those huge gains in appraised value and tax values going up.
Right.
I'm not a tax person, so maybe this year we'll have another issue, but after that, it would normalize.
It should go normalize, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a really positive thing for Texans as well, continuing to be able to afford being in their home.
Yeah, I mean, Texas is a non-disclosure state, so people don't know what, I mean, the appraisal district, the county that you're living in doesn't know what you really bought the house for, right?
Oh, I can tell.
Right. So it's important to continue to, it's important to continue to fight that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, you know, your trusted real estate agent that you utilize to buy that home can work with you to make sure that, you know, they're running the proper comps back in that time period that doesn't show you paid $600,000 for that $500,000 house.
Right.
It should be appraised or assessed maybe at $400 and something thousand or $300 if you get lucky, right, to keep the tax values low and the dollar amount low.
And I don't want to take anything away from my realtors because my realtors have a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
But I use this website called Property Tax IO. Have you used it before?
I haven't, no. Yeah.
I had a fabulous experience with them in my one of my Dallas rentals because I didn't have well, first of all, I wasn't going to Dallas at 8:00 in the morning to fight taxes. So that's where I drew the line, but I was going to fight taxes. And so they did a great job and they got me a reduction and they only get paid if they get you the reduction. So it was a very valuable tool for me this year.
I like the performance pay aspect of it. Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
So what's it called?
Property Tax IO.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out.
I have to think. I don't think there's a dot in there, but if you just Google Property Tax IO, it'll come up. And it was great.
Okay.
And I saved on my taxes. And like I said, they take a percentage of what they save you.
Yep.
And they only get paid if they win.
Golden nugget right there, man. That's awesome.
There's a couple of tiers to their service. I think there's a free one where they'll just run the comps for you. And you still go to deal with the appraisal district. And I was like, no, I want that.
No, I want the high tier. I'm not going down there to deal with anybody.
I can pull comps. Okay. I don't need that part. I need you to go to the appraisal district. But anyway, we're kind of getting off topic, but I do think there's a lot of people are talking very negatively about this market.
Yeah.
And there obviously are always pros and cons to any market, right? And we have seen a major slowdown in home buying and selling right now. And we will probably continue to see a slowdown through winter. That's what I'm hearing a lot of predictions on. But I think property values coming back to a more normalized market, and then the trickle down effect from that, i.e. the tax rates, the taxable amount of the house is going to normalize as well. I think there's a lot of positivities to this market and more expensive money. I mean, if you talk to my dad, he's like 7%, you know, 19% of my money.
I had 19%.
It's all relative,
exactly.
you know, so people just have to adjust. You have to adjust your strategies or your lending products that you're using, or you have to adjust maybe the price of the house a little bit.
Right. Yep. You know me, I'm the optimist, right?
You're Mr. Solution.
I'm going to find solutions, and I'm always looking at the other side of the opportunity to find ways to help people. We're in business to make sure that we lend money. And so we have to figure out what's the best strategy to put the client into the best loan that minimizes the amount of interest they pay over the period of time they're going to keep the house. So whether that's coming up with strategies like a 2-1 buy down, whether that's coming
very
up,
popular product right now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, okay, so your interest rate starts at 7, or it's at 7% start, but you're going to pay 4%, or 5% the first year, right? 6% the second year, and then 7% the next 27 years. Well, just like we talked, the reality is most people aren't going to be in the house for 27 years or 30 years, right? So we're bailing after the first year or second year. So your average rate may end up being 5.5 when we bail and we refinance to a different product if the market changes in a year or 2 or 2.5 years, right? So you have to come up with strategies and solutions to help people see see a little bit more clearly that it's not an 8% market today, right? It's not a 7.5% market. It doesn't have to be. But if it is it still the right solution for you given your current circumstances? Where you're living today, why you need to move, why you're wanting to move, what you're currently paying, if it's 100% in rent, or if you're sitting in a house that you need to sell, or can we turn around and turn that into an investment? And then now we've totally changed the game for possibly someone that has a house at 2.9. We're like, let's don't get rid of the house. If you really want to move, let's keep it as an investment, turn it into income, and let somebody else pay that loan off, which increases your overall net worth. Now we're talking like strategies, financial strategies, which gets me excited. And then at the end of the day, it's about how we present it. The customer has to make the decision. If this is the right thing for them, they're going to see it very clearly because we'll utilize the tools that has it all out there with graphs and charts and all that cool, colorful stuff, and then make a decision and go.
Well, and I think a lot of people call their lender like, what's your rate? What's the current rate?
Sure.
What kind of rate am I going to get? And if you, as a lender, simply answer that question, I don't know that I think you deserve the business, but
exactly.
Why are we concerned about the rate? Let's talk about what your overall plan is and kind of deep dive into what your why is and what you're trying to accomplish. Because honestly, and look, I'm not going to speak for all homeowners, but I care about the monthly mortgage payment. I care about what's coming out of my bank account every month. Mm-hmm. The price of the house and the interest rate aren't as important to me as what is coming out of my bank account each month.
Yeah. I was on a podcast call this morning with a real estate group, and they were talking about like challenges they were having on converting buyers, like initial calls with buyers to get them to talk to a lender. And I said, well, first off, you need to change that perspective in what you say is lender. If you're talking about a lender, I wouldn't want to be on a call with them either. You need to look at them or me as your strategic partner. And that conversation changes with like, look, at the end of the day, because if a client says, well, I'm going to wait till interest rates go down, or I want, I feel like the payments are going to be too high, or whatever it's going to be, because that's what they're experiencing now on the cold calls that they're having. Mm-hmm. And it's like, look, you need to really allow us to have a conversation with your strategic partner, right, that can help build an analysis for you so that you understand the path that you're about to go down. Is it really that expensive? They may be able to show you, right, opportunities and options that get you exactly what you want today, or they're going to show you the path that you need to be on so that when you're ready to pull the trigger in 6 months, you're good to go, right? And so it's not about selling or negotiating on that initial call. It's about getting on the same side of the table and understanding the feel, felt, found rule. I feel what you're...
Whoa, say that again?
Oh, feel, felt, found.
I don't think I've heard you say that before.
Oh, really?
One more time.
Feel, felt, found. Okay, so I'm
used to these kind of things coming out of your mouth.
Yeah,
but I don't think I've heard that one.
what I told him was, when you get on the same side of the table as somebody on that call, I understand how you feel. Many of my customers have felt the same way. That we're talking to, so you're not alone. But what I found is when I put them in touch with my strategic partner, right, what they're able to do is have a call with them and understand that the path that they're on is the right path to be, or they may be able to pivot and show them how they could use seller contributions to get their rate down to a point where it was back close to where the market was, that makes it more affordable for you to be able to purchase today. So all I would like to do is have that call with them. It's 15 minutes, and as my strategic partner, they'll do it for you complimentary, and they'll provide all this stuff to you without being able to pull a credit report. So what time would be good today? Is that 2:00 today good for you? And I mean, it's just like, it's you have to.
And there you have it, people. There's a perfect script.
Feel, felt, found.
Well, and I think we could do an entire podcast on just how realtors can overcome objections with sellers and buyers, for sure. And that was very smooth how you did that.
I've been on a lot of calls.
Yeah, that was perfect. But I agree with what you're saying. I love the fact that it's strategic partner, not my lender. And I love the deep dive into, well, they don't need to deep dive. The realtor doesn't. It's just teeing up the phone call for you to come in and do the deep dive and really figure out how to shake things out so that it makes most sense for them to go ahead and move forward with buying. Because look, we all know buyers are hesitant right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of them have pulled out of the market. So how do we get people back into the market, back into feeling comfortable about doing a deal and moving, and doing real estate again?
Stop talking about it. I mean, I'm going crazy with some of the comments and realtors talking about, oh, the interest rates are going up. And, I mean, it's like, it's fear-based selling.
Well, and
we
if
don't,
you have that conversation with your client, you're not going to buy or sell a house.
right. You need to be looking at this a lot differently, and don't shy away from it. Yeah, interest rates have gone up, but do you also realize home prices have gone up? And as soon as interest rates go down, home prices are going to continue to rise. And now, instead of buying the house for $500, it's going to be another feeding frenzy, and you're going to pay $600 for the house.
Right.
You have an extra $100,000 saved up. No. Okay, so let's get back to the real reason why you want to buy, and let's have the conversation.
Love it.
I mean, it's like addressing it right head on.
Well, and I'm looking at this paragraph that I wanted to read, and we went from kind of the hard part to this bright spot now, and now this is back to like something negative that I don't know that I want to talk about anymore. Why don't we just scrap this part? I mean,
Okay.
Look, if you're a real estate agent, you have access to Inman. I mean, I love their articles all of the time, and this is a national article, but I think, after attending our economic forecast here locally, we know that we're in a different state than the rest of the nation, right? We talk about it all the time. We're in a bubble. We're not going to see the dramatic drops that other cities are going to see. We did have the higher appreciation rates.
Yes.
And a lot of that was because of huge amounts of relocation, which is still coming here. Caterpillar's coming. And
oh my gosh. And by the way, I wanted to say thank you so much for the invitation to that, because that whole economic forecast was spot on. It was awesome, and I really appreciate you putting that on. Because I like sitting there. You're like, "Hey, Bob, I'll get you the slides." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine," but I'm taking notes.
I know I'm literally sitting behind you, and you're taking pictures the whole time. And I'm like, I think I texted Jen. It was like, "Tell Bob I'll send him the slides."
But I'm taking pictures, and I'm writing notes along with the slides, because there was a lot of nuggets in there that I use for my conversations that I have with clients, and I use on video. So there's always, I know we're going to talk about a different segment, next, but those are always opportunities to gain just pieces of information that you can share that validates your level of expertise, your commitment to what's happening in the current market, so that people, trust you and they have social proof when you start putting it out there.
You said social proof, just like Kyle Draper did. He's going to be so proud right now.
Well, he's a good guy. He's a smart guy.
Yeah,
he knows his
he
shit.
is like social proof. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about that lately. But look, I feel it's our job as affiliates and service to our realtor clients to have available to them this kind of information.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility. We are charged with making sure that our clients and our partners have the information they need to go out and be successful in their real estate practice. So I take things like that very seriously, and I'm glad that you like the economic forecast. I'm always up for a good economic forecast myself. Let's move on to, let's talk about number 2. Okay, what do we know? And maybe we've covered some of this already, but and then we'll lead into what we think about the Fed. So what do we know about the market right now?
As in which, like the real estate or homes or mortgages?
Both. Why not?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about the home piece, right? Because we're starting to see normalized pricing. We're starting to see
normalized days on market.
Normalized days on market. You're also seeing it as I am. We're getting sellers paying title policy.
Yes, they are. The home warranty.
Home warranty. When you start to see those in contracts, we've started to shift a little bit. Now, I wouldn't say we're in a buyer's market at all, but we're starting to see more normalized type contracts come in. Seller pay title, seller pay home warranty.
And where is that appraisal waiver?
We're not seeing that anymore. I mean, it's like every deal for 2 years. Can I get an appraisal waiver? Can I get an appraisal waiver? I need an appraisal waiver. Now it's gone.
It's like poof.
Right. Just went away. But that's what happens, right? That's how these markets
Absolutely.
evolve.
Absolutely.
And that's how lenders and agents, we really have to work together and evolve and modify and pivot, which is, my word I love, pivot very quickly. And we've pivoted. We still do appraisal waivers, but they're not really as big and there's not as needed in today's market. But what we're starting to find is, instead of, and what we're really working on educating agents on and sellers and everybody is, look, even if you're in a normalized market and you're starting to think about decreasing the price, we have 2 things to think about today. It's not the traditional market where home prices are going down and buyers are wanting that to go down because or they're okay with it going down, so they're negotiating price because they want the lowest price for the house, but they have the buyers have the concern about interest rates. So we're saying don't necessarily discount the price of the home, utilize seller concessions versus the discount in price. So let's say you're going to discount at $10,000. Don't do the price discount. Give $10,000 for the seller to use to the buyer's rate buy down.
Right.
And we can look at either a 2-1 buy down opportunity. We can look at some type of buy down on an ARM, or look at a 30-year fixed rate buy down and see how low we can get that based on the amount of months or years that they're going to keep that home. And that's a different way to help the seller and help the communities keep the values high, because listen, buyers, I mean, we all want values higher. We don't want to show values decreasing, because that's just going to hurt you, right?
Yeah.
So we want a good stabilized price, but then we want to minimize your out-of-pocket expense. And if you're going to be using $10,000, but you're going to be wanting to refinance in 18 or 24 months, if that's what we're looking at, then maybe the solution isn't to buy down the rate, it's just to pay all your closing costs so that you're saving money out of pocket, because that would be your better short-term solution over an 18-month period versus just using it all for rate buy down.
Okay.
And those are things that we would compare for them.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I think with homes. And then with interest rates, I mean, today we've had really good market news the last couple of days, which has seen either the cost to get the same rate go down by a couple $1,000s, right? So if let's say you wanted I'm just making up a number now, okay? So this aren't the right rate. So if you wanted a rate at 6.5 and it's going to cost you $5,000, today may only cost you $2,000, right? So the cost to get that is gone. And then, or you could go from 6.5 and go to 6% and pay the same amount of money that you were going to pay, right? So the last couple of days have been really good in the bond markets, right? But obviously we still have the remainder of this year and a lot of topics to go through there.
What's going to happen after the elections? Everybody's sitting on the fence, and everybody always wants to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's super interesting. What do we think about the Fed meeting? And let's see. You gave me these questions, so I'm just going to read them.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
All right.
So I'm going to read your questions back to you, Bob, and then you're going to answer your questions.
Okay.
When is the Fed meeting, and what are we waiting on them to decide? That's the first question. Let's stop there.
Well, so we have 2 more Fed meetings coming up. We have one in November 2nd, December 2nd, right? So those are the next 2 Fed meetings. And we already kind of have an idea of what's going to happen with the 2 meetings at this point. The Fed is already on record of saying they want the Fed fund rate above 4%, right? Well, we're sitting at about, I think we're sitting at 3.25 right now. So we're fully anticipating a 75 basis point rate hike on November 2nd, right? And then well above, we don't know what that means. Is that 4.25? Is it 4.75 or 4.5? And so we need to wait to find out what's going to happen in that December meeting as to their next adjustment. Is it 1/4, 1/2, or 3/4 of a point? And that's where we're going to end up rounding out the year, right? So we kind of already understand that. And what happens is the bond market, we already are starting to price that stuff in, right? It's not like when the Fed adjusts the Fed funds rate from 3.25 to 4%. We're not seeing a 75 basis point increase in interest rates. They don't work. It doesn't work that way, right? Otherwise, we really would price people out of buying homes.
Yes, absolutely.
So every day we're incrementally pricing in what our anticipated Fed hike is going to be. So that way there's not as much increase in the long-term mortgage rates for consumers. So that's why they don't feel it as much. And then where the adjustments come into play is after the meeting. Because we already know, we're already going into this market figuring out what that Fed's going to do. So it's the statements, the commentary that they make after the meeting that's so important, and that drives what happens immediately after those meetings in the bond markets, the mortgage rates, right? So if the Fed comes out and says they still don't understand inflation, or they don't have it under control the way that they feel like they should, then we're going to start to see and anticipate another 75 basis point rate hike in December. So we're going to start incrementally increasing that before December's meetings. And that's where you're going to see the market may adjust immediately after that meeting on November 2nd. If they come back and they feel more confident about their position and they understand it a little bit better, then we will anticipate less than 75 basis points, which would and could have rates drop a little bit after that Fed meeting on November 2nd, right? So it's really the commentary that happens. And then the big one is going to be what's happening in December, right? Because if we're not into, we're not into January, like Q1 meetings and anything like that. But if they're really on record of saying, hey, we're in a good position now, well, are we going to not have any more rate hikes in 2023? Or are we at a point where they're going to start bringing that Fed rate back down? And that's when we're saying, okay, if that's the case, and that's going to happen in Q3, if they make that statement that they're going to start adjusting rates down in Q3, the Fed fund rate, bam, we're going to start to get a really big benefit and pick up in mortgage rates by then, and that's where the rates are going to come down.
Yeah, and that's what I think you really need to distinguish Fed rate versus mortgage rate.
Yeah. Well, the Fed rate is the rate that the banks are borrowing at, right? So if they're borrowing at a cheap rate, then they can lend it out, and obviously there's a different level of spread there, and that's what they lend it out. They borrow it out at a lower rate. They can lend it out at a higher rate, and they make more money. Right now, they're borrowing at a higher rate, so they're borrowing at 3.25. So they're having to lend it out at a higher number, which obviously hurts us as consumers because now we're borrowing at a higher number, right? Because they're having to borrow it themselves at a higher number. But that is all the bank side, right? It's not really what's impacting it on the mortgage bond side and mortgage rates.
Yeah,
and that's long term.
Okay, yes, because that's what I want you to distinguish. Because just because the Fed does it doesn't necessarily translate into mortgage interest rates.
Not at all. It doesn't translate. More times often than not, even when the Fed makes their statements and they increase rates, we start to see a little bit of a lowering of mortgage rates because we've either priced in a little bit too much, right, to anticipate even a bigger increase the next time. So we typically end up being a little bit more favorable on the mortgage side, and we have a little bit of a drop the day after or the day of the Fed meeting. Any
thoughts about mortgage interest rates through the end of the year?
Yeah, I feel like it as far as what we're looking at and the I guess the way that we're seeing the trend lines go, I wouldn't anticipate mortgage rates drastically changing from where they are right now. Because we can still pick people in the 5s if they're on the ARMs, or you're getting in the high 6s and low 7s for fixed rates, depending on down payment and credit type and things like that.
Sure.
We're not, our analysts, the way that we get Fed data, we're not seeing 8% interest rates before the end of the year. And that's just
that was a nasty rumor I heard.
Yeah, and that's based on the data we have today, right? And the data we know that we're anticipating with the Fed meeting on the 2nd.
Right.
We'll make that reevaluation after the 2nd of November to know if we're really going to feel the same way and if we're going to maybe even see rates go down before the end of the year.
Wouldn't that be a nice Christmas present for everyone?
It'd be a great one. And there's a chance.
Yeah.
There really is.
Well, I think this is a good place to stop because we're going to record a part 2 to this podcast.
I love that.
And that's taking all this information we just talked about and giving our realtors some strategies, right, on how to move forward through the end of the year. So hang on for part 2.
I love it. Let's do it.